Chosen ones, what you did shook everything. Your sacrifice, that pure, selfless offering for the greater good, sent shockwaves through the spiritual realm that still reverberate today. The heavens themselves vibrated with each act of surrender, each moment you put others before yourself, even as those around you failed to recognize the magnitude of your offering. The spiritual realm erupted in wonder as you continued to give, continued to serve, continued to sacrifice, all while being taken for granted by those who should have honored your worth. But God saw. God noticed every single time they overlooked you, every moment they casually dismissed your sacrifice, every instance they treated his chosen vessels as common. And now watch as the divine hand moves. Watch as the God who received your sacrifice begins to address those who undervalued his precious ones. The spiritual realm that shook with your offering now trembles in anticipation of God's response to those who took you for granted. Your sacrifice was never in vain, and those who failed to recognize its worth are about to understand exactly whose presence they stood in. What looks small in the natural was colossal in the spiritual. Every time you let go of toxic ties, something cracked in the unseen realm. Every time you chose truth over convenience, a stronghold lost its grip. Every time you suffered in silence, refusing to repay evil with evil, the atmosphere shifted. You didn't just make sacrifices, you shattered barriers. Generational curses that plagued your bloodline for centuries, broken. Cycles of lack, pain, and dysfunction, dismantled. The war you fought wasn't just for you. It was for those who would come after you. The enemy thought your suffering would silence you. Instead, it amplified your authority. There were moments you wanted to give in, but something inside you refused. You pressed on when no one was watching. You obeyed when it cost you everything. And while the world moved on, heaven recorded every moment. Nothing was wasted. The unseen battles you fought were violent. Nights of tears, days of enduring what should have crushed you, betrayal that should have made you bitter. But instead of folding, you became a weapon. Your silence was louder than your enemies' accusations. Your endurance was more powerful than their schemes. Heaven took note. Angels stood still as you suffered quietly, waiting for the divine decree. Every injustice, every overlooked sacrifice was logged in eternity. The weight of your obedience tipped the scales. The shift has begun. The ground beneath your feet is changing. The resistance you felt wasn't proof of your failure. It was proof of your impact. The darkness that tried to consume you was afraid of what you would become. Your pain was never pointless. Your sacrifice was never in vain. What was broken is now being rebuilt. What was stolen is now being returned. The weight of generational bondage has been lifted, not just from you, but from your lineage. And those who dismissed your struggles, they are about to witness the full force of what your suffering accomplished. The barriers have been shattered. The way has been cleared. Nothing can stop what comes next. They thought you were weak. Your silence, they mistook it for surrender. Your patience, they assumed it meant powerlessness. Your humility, they saw it as a flaw, not a weapon. But they were wrong. The world never understood you. They laughed at your kindness, unaware it was a divine strategy. They mocked your endurance, never realizing it was proof of your strength. They assumed they could manipulate, discard, and control you, never recognizing that heaven had marked you. Dark forces tried to break you. They sent betrayal to crush you. They used rejection to silence you. They orchestrated loss, thinking it would strip you of your faith. Every attack was calculated, designed to make you give up before your appointed time. But they underestimated who you were. You didn't break. You didn't fold. You didn't let bitterness consume you. Instead, you let the fire refine you. Every wound deepened your wisdom. Every rejection sharpened your discernment. Every setback positioned you for greater authority. They thought they buried you. What they failed to realize was that they planted you. The very soil they threw you into became the foundation for your rise. The suffering they caused only increased your anointing. The pain they inflicted only multiplied your power. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Your enemies assumed they were in control. They believed they had the upper hand. They convinced themselves that their actions would have no consequences. But heaven had been watching. The spiritual realm had been recording. The scales had been tipping with every silent sacrifice. The same people who disregarded you will be forced to recognize you. The ones who used you will struggle without you. The tables they once sat at so comfortably are about to turn, and they won't have a seat. Their arrogance blinded them. Their deception fooled only themselves. They never saw what was coming, but they will. The underestimated are about to be revealed. The forgotten are about to be elevated. The dismissed are about to become undeniable. Nothing will look the same. Heaven was never silent. The moment you gave, the heavens took note. The moment you suffered in silence, the courts of eternity recorded it. Every betrayal, every injustice, every moment you chose righteousness over revenge, it was all witnessed. Nothing went unnoticed. You thought you were alone. You thought no one saw. But divine forces were mobilized the second you laid yourself down for the greater good. Angels stood at attention. They watched as you endured pain meant to break you. They saw the weight you carried, the burdens you bore without complaint. They recorded every time you put others before yourself, even when it cost you everything. And they moved. Declarations were made in the Spirit. Decrees were written in your name. The sacrifices you made became the evidence presented before the throne of God. Justice was set in motion. The enemy thought your suffering was a victory. He thought your silence meant defeat. He thought he could use people to dishonor you, dismiss you, and destroy you. But divine law cannot be mocked. Your sacrifice was currency in the heavens. Every act of obedience, every tear shed in secret, every moment you chose light over darkness, it built something. A case against those who wronged you, a foundation for the blessings to come. Your suffering was not in vain. What was done to you has been weighed. What was taken from you has been accounted for. The spiritual realm has shifted because of what you endured, and the response is inevitable. Some will call it consequences. Some will call it karma. But the truth is, divine retribution has been set into motion. Not by your hand, not by your desire, but by the unshakable law of the kingdom. What was whispered in darkness is about to be exposed in the light. What was plotted in secret is about to be revealed for all to see. Heaven has ruled in your favor. The verdict has been declared. Now, watch what happens next. But you almost walked away. You almost let the weight crush you. The betrayal, the rejection, the endless sacrifice. It was too much. You gave and got nothing in return. You loved and were met with indifference. You poured out everything only to be left empty. It made no sense. You questioned everything. Why did God allow this? Why did He stay silent while you suffered? Why did the wicked seem to flourish while you barely held on? Heaven felt distant. You prayed, but the answers never came. You cried out, but the silence was deafening. You felt abandoned, forgotten, discarded. But something inside you refused to quit. The world tried to break you. The poor enemy tried to silence you. The weight of it all tried to steal your faith. Yet you endured, even when you didn't understand. You stayed faithful even when you had nothing left. You kept going, even when your heart ached. You still chose righteousness. That's when everything shifted. The spiritual realm could not ignore your sacrifice any longer. The suffering that once seemed endless had completed its work. The breaking point was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to usher in the divine response. Your endurance triggered heaven's intervention. The same pain that almost took you out, became the key to your elevation. The same suffering that left you in tears became the evidence that demanded justice. God never forgot. Heaven recorded every sleepless night, every time you pushed forward when you wanted to collapse, every moment you stayed silent while being wronged. It was all leading to this. What once crushed you will now crown you. What once wounded you will now strengthen you. What once seemed like the end was actually the beginning. Everything has changed. Your suffering has spoken. The spiritual realm has answered. The tables have started to turn, and those who took you for granted, they will soon understand exactly who you are. Stop right there. Yes, you. Not everyone will feel this, and if that's the case, keep it moving. No hard feelings. But if something in your spirit just locked in, if you feel this in your gut, in your soul, then you already know this message is meant for you. The outliers, the ones who see through the illusion, the ones who've been told to sit down, to fall in line, to be like everyone else, but never could. You don't follow trends. You don't ask for permission. You walk through life like a storm, untouchable, unshaken, undeniable. While the world chases its tail, you carve your own path, alone if you have to. Not for approval, not for applause, but because it's simply who you are. You take what was meant to break you and forge something divine. You carry wisdom that can't be taught, only lived. If this speaks to you, then maybe it's time you found your people. The Obsidian Inner Order, the #1 ascension nexus for chosen ones. Over 400 of us gathering, sharpening, evolving. No masks, no illusions, just raw, unfiltered truth. The link is in the description. If you're ready, you'll know where to find us. If not, that's fine too. Some doors aren't for everyone. God saw everything. The moments you held your tongue, the times you chose integrity over compromise, the sacrifices no one acknowledged. Nothing was forgotten. You grew weary. You questioned if doing good was worth it. You watched the wicked prosper while you suffered. But the delay was not a denial. God was storing up justice. He was gathering every ounce. He was building something greater than you could see. And now the first signs have appeared. Those who took you for granted are facing setbacks. The ones who wronged you are struggling in ways they don't understand. Their plans are failing. Their confidence is shaken. The shift has begun. Doors that were closed to you are opening. Resources that were withheld are being released. Battles you once fought alone are now being fought for you. You don't have to lift a finger. This is not your doing. It's divine law unfolding. What was sown in righteousness is reaping its reward. What was done in wickedness is facing its consequence. Galatians 6:9 was never just a verse. It was a decree. Do not grow weary in doing good, for in due season you will reap if you do not give up. Your season has arrived. The harvest is coming, and nothing can stop it. The repayment has begun, and no one can undo it. The people who dismissed you are realizing their mistake, but it's too late. God is not mocked. The ones who took advantage of you will see the cost of their actions. The ones who discarded you will witness your rise. The ones who spoke against you will be silenced. Everything is aligning. Your endurance unlocked something unshakable. Your suffering was the currency for a blessing that cannot be stolen. Your faithfulness has demanded a response. Watch closely. This is only the beginning. The balance of power is shifting. The ones who once stood tall are beginning to stumble. The ones who spoke against you are suddenly silent. The ones who mocked your pain are now facing their own. They never saw it coming. They assumed they were untouchable. They thought they could mistreat you without consequence. They believed they could play games with your kindness forever. But heaven had other plans. God let them run for a season. He let them believe they were in control. He watched as they manipulated, deceived, and took advantage. Their time is up. The same traps they set for you are now catching their feet. The same doors they slammed shut are locking them out. The same pain they caused is coming back in full measure. This isn't coincidence. It's divine reckoning. The spiritual scales demanded balance. What was stolen had to be returned. What was broken had to be restored. What was overlooked had to be honored. No one escapes divine law. They mocked your patience. They laughed at your humility. They called you weak because you didn't fight back. They mistook mercy for permission. But God's justice moves in ways they never expected. Their plans are unraveling. Their confidence is cracking. Their power is slipping through their fingers. What they built in deception cannot stand. What they gained through manipulation is turning to dust. What they thought they secured is crumbling before their eyes. This is not your revenge. This is God's response. You never had to fight. You never had to prove your worth. You never had to make them see. God is handling it. The people who underestimated you will soon understand. The ones who disregarded you will soon regret it. The ones who wronged you will soon wish they hadn't. The tables have turned, and nothing will ever be the same. Everything that tried to break you only built you. Every setback strengthened you. Every betrayal refined you. Every tear watered the ground beneath your feet. You were never losing. You were being positioned. The world saw your suffering and called it defeat. They assumed you were finished. They believed you would never recover. They were wrong. You are rising, not as the person they remember, but as someone transformed. The pain forged something unshakable inside you. The fire did not consume you. It purified you. Now, nothing can stop what's coming. You lost much, but what's being restored is greater. You were pushed aside, but the elevation will be undeniable. You were silenced, but your voice is about to carry weight they cannot ignore. They can feel it. The ones who dismissed you sense the shift. The ones who betrayed you sense the loss. The ones who thought they won are realizing they never had control. Your rise is not about revenge. It's about alignment. Everything stolen is being returned in a greater measure. Everything delayed is being released at the appointed time. Everything broken is being rebuilt stronger than before. You are stepping into authority. What once oppressed you now fears you. What once held you back no longer has power. What once kept you hidden can no longer contain you. They tried to destroy you. Instead, they made you unbreakable. They tried to silence you. Instead, they amplified your influence. They tried to bury you. Instead, they planted you in fertile ground. The time of being overlooked is over. God is placing you where you belong. No man can stop it. No enemy can block it. No force can undo what's already been set in motion. Your suffering was not wasted. Your faithfulness was not forgotten. Your rise was never in question. Now the world will see. They thought they got away with it. They used you and walked away. They took advantage of your kindness without a second thought. They believed you would always be there, always giving, always forgiving. But their season of ease is over. What they built on deception is collapsing. What they gained through manipulation is slipping from their hands. What they took from you is costing them more than they ever imagined. They can't stop it. They don't understand why doors are closing. They don't know why their plans keep failing. They don't realize the weight of what they did until it's too late. The same ones who discarded you are searching for you. The same ones who mocked you are now whispering your name. The same ones who ignored you are desperate to reach you. But access has been revoked. They assumed you would always wait. They assumed they could return when it suited them. They assumed they had time. They were wrong. God is dealing with them now. Not in anger, not in vengeance, but in justice. What was hidden is being exposed. The lies they told are unraveling. The masks they wore are falling apart. They will reap what they have sown, not because you wished it, not because you sought revenge, but because divine law cannot be mocked. They thought they could mistreat you without consequence. They thought they could dismiss you without cost. They thought they could rewrite history, but truth always wins. Therefore, all is not your doing. Their downfall is not your concern. Their regret is not your responsibility. This is between them and God. What they lost, they cannot regain. What they destroyed, they cannot rebuild. What they took for granted, they will never have again. And they will know exactly why. Nothing was lost. Every tear, every sacrifice, every moment of endurance, it was all recorded. Heaven kept track of what was taken, the pain, the betrayal, the loss. It was never the end of your story. Restoration has begun. What was stolen is being returned. What was delayed is being accelerated. What was withheld is being released. This is divine repayment. The years of struggle are being redeemed. The silent suffering is turning into public victory. The losses that nearly broke you are setting the stage for something greater. You will not recognize this next season. The same places where you were humiliated will be the places where you are elevated. The same people who overlooked you will witness your restoration. The same circumstances that crushed you will now serve you. God is moving. Opportunities once blocked are opening. Resources once denied are flowing. Strength once drained is returning in full force. Nothing was wasted. Every battle refined you. Every loss prepared you. Every delay positioned you for something greater. And this time, no one can take it from you. What is given by God cannot be stolen. What is restored by heaven cannot be undone. What is set in motion cannot be stopped. This restoration is not just for you. It's breaking generational cycles. It's lifting those connected to you. It's creating a legacy that cannot be erased. The enemy thought he won. He thought your losses would destroy you. He thought your suffering would silence you. But here you are, stronger, wiser, unshaken. Your restoration will be undeniable. Your elevation will be unstoppable. Your testimony will be unforgettable. Watch as everything stolen is returned, and this time, it comes back with interest. You didn't just survive, you changed the course of history. You broke chains that existed for generations. You shattered cycles that enslaved your bloodline. Your pain had a purpose. The battles you fought weren't just for you. The sacrifices you made weren't in vain. The path you cleared will be walked by many after you. You are a blueprint. Your endurance became a lesson. Your victories became a testimony. Your story became a roadmap for those who will rise after you. This is bigger than you. Your obedience altered destinies. Your suffering birthed transformation. Your journey became a foundation for something eternal. The enemy tried to silence you. He threw everything at you. Loss, betrayal, isolation. He wanted you broken. He wanted you forgotten. He wanted you erased. But you endured. You carried burdens that weren't yours. You stood strong when others ran. You stayed faithful when no one was watching. And heaven recorded it all. Your name is written in places you haven't seen yet. Your impact is reaching further than you know. Your obedience has opened doors you haven't even walked through. This is your legacy, not of pain, but of power. Not of struggle, but of strength. Not of survival, but of victory. You set a new standard. Generations after you will walk in freedom because of what you overcame. Families will be restored because of what you endured. Lives will be transformed because of what you carried. You were never just another person. You were chosen, handpicked, set apart. Your life was never random. Your journey was never meaningless. Everything had a purpose, and the world will never, never be the same because you existed. You were never forsaken. Every tear was counted. Every sacrifice was recorded. Every battle was seen. God never left you, even in the silence. He was working. Even in the darkness, He was guiding. Even in the suffering, He was strengthening. Nothing was wasted. The pain shaped you. The rejection refined you. The losses positioned you. You became unstoppable. The enemy did everything to destroy you. He tried to break your spirit. He tried to crush your purpose. He tried to make you doubt your calling, but he failed. You didn't just survive. You emerged stronger. You didn't just endure. You overcame. You didn't just wait. You were prepared. And now it's time. Watch how God handles those who took you for granted. Watch how justice unfolds. Watch how restoration overtakes you. This is your moment. No more hiding. No more suffering in silence. No more waiting for permission to rise. You are stepping into everything meant for you. The tables have turned. The path is clear. The promise is unfolding. Walk boldly. Stand in your authority. Move without fear. Speak without hesitation, because this is just the beginning.